I'm going to talk about the weather today because we're British, it's the weekend. What do we always talk about at the weekend? What the weather's like? Because usually it's been nice during the week when we're all stuck in shops, factories and offices. And then at the weekend when we've got all our plans, it's usually blowing a hoolie. Anyway, it's quite still today. It's 19 degrees here. But I'm really glad the Met Office have managed to get the weather forecasts so finite and accurate, aren't you? I mean, they predicted a heat wave. That was yesterday. It happened yesterday. And actually around us, it lasted nearly 4 hours. We were up at 23 degrees. I nearly had to put a parasol up. I would like something from Lawrence of Arabia going to the fridge for a cold drink. So, you know, at least they managed to narrow it down, and we knew it was yesterday, the heat wave, 4 hours. Thankfully, it got to like 19 degrees in the evening. And, you know, that was the first day I've sat outside without a cardigan on. And it's what? 3rd, 4th week of July. But continuing with the weather theme, Ed Miliband, how long's he been in office? I think I've had bread longer. And he's managed to sanction a 2,500 square acre solar panel farm that's had 1,360 objections, and someone's produced a 339-page document laying out all the downside to it. And guess what? Ed actually admitted he hadn't even bothered reading the document. He always sounds like a cokehead to me. I know he isn't, but he sounds like one. He's always very nasal. And he's not really got a good track record for these things. But to me, he's one of these stooge-type MPs that they just push out there because they think they're going to be popular. The Miliband brothers, really? I think the Crays were more popular. So the weather, again, what are we fed? We get the Swedish doom goblin, famous for nicking off school to talk about the weather and becoming an international superstar, something that the kids hang the hat on. She managed to go to a war zone to talk to begging for billions. What's he called? Him in khaki. Never out of khaki, never seen a bullet. We know who I'm on about. What's she doing going over there? She normally just discusses the weather, doesn't she, the Swedish doom goblin? So you get all these conflicting reports, and then I listened to Patrick Moore, who was the original founder, or one of them, for Greenpeace before it got highly commercialised, and that's why he walked away from it. And he's explained that we are actually in the middle of an ice age, the tail end of an ice age, one of the coldest periods on Earth, and for 150 million years there wasn't any ice on the ice caps before this ice age. Nobody bothers telling you that bit. And then you get Al Gore, who's commercially connected to talking about the weather and flies all over the world, sometimes in private jets or first class, accruing a fortune of $330 million. How do you do that when all you've talked about, you were a failed politician and all you've done is go to places talking about the weather? Mind you, it's a $1.5 trillion a year industry. So there's a lot of money to be made on that side of the fence. And the great news is, during these difficult times of rising sea levels, the Maldives are getting 650 million spent on a new airport that's going to have 2 jetties for seaplane docks. Yeah, they don't seem to be too worried. Has anybody told them about the weather? Have they told them what they're expecting moving forward? 650 million investment in a new airport, a strip of land that's next to the sea. It makes you wonder what's going on. It makes you ask questions, and you should, because we should be better informed. And it always tickles me that the government set up an online safety bill so that we can stop misinformation. Most of the misinformation comes from them. And you see, what I don't agree with is giving away power. And giving away power from our own parliament, because at least, even though they are duffers, we can vote the duffers in and out, we can complain about them, we can complain to them if you're like-minded, and if enough of you did it, you'd have an effect, but we're too apathetic, aren't we? But nevertheless, what really gets me with all this, I live in the north of England. You've probably seen videos of my garden. I've got a lush green lawn. It's always that colour. We don't water it. We've never had to, because it's always damp up here. We're on an island in the middle of the North Atlantic. Let's face it, it gets battered to death with wind and rain most of the time. We've one of the wettest stretches we've ever had. and the lawn is lush and green. But I do appreciate that down in Surrey, my friend's lawn is already going brown. So even from Surrey to Lancashire, there's a difference in the climate and what's going on. So how is it a good idea to give someone jurisdiction to a non-government organisation that doesn't even know about that, the difference between Lancashire and Surrey, just going to look at the UK on a map and see this dot of an island and decide it all has to do something, all the inhabitants of that island have to behave in a certain way because the person making the rules has never lived here, probably doesn't speak English, he sat in Zurich or South America dishing out the rules. Point number 2, why should we allow this when the people in our parliament who gift away sovereignty aren't doing their job any cheaper? They're not sat there in parliament saying, yes, well, we're going to let the WHO decide on lockdowns because of the climate or illnesses. We're going to let the WHO decide all that. So the best thing we can do, instead of earning 85 grand a year, we'll only take 70 and we'll do less expensive, because no matter how much sovereignty and jurisdiction they give away, they never do the job any cheaper, have you noticed? Still get wage rises every single year. They never miss a beat. Index-linked pensions, discounted food, discounted travel, bills paid in the second home. Some of them really pull it, don't they? I mean, Angela Rayner, come on, love. I thought you weren't supposed to rent out council property that you bought. I thought you had to own it for 10 years. I don't know, I've never been in that position, but it all looks a bit sus to me. But do you see what I mean? We've got these people so willing to deal with the WEF and deal with the WHO, and they're basically giving away responsibility. It's like putting your child in childcare and saying, right, I'm handing it over to you between 9 and 5 because I work. So that woman has got jurisdiction over your child during that period. And these people, but you're paying for that. But these people are being given jurisdiction over us without any discussion. They've not asked us. Stuff like that should be put to a referendum. And don't even think that referendums need to be expensive, because they don't. That was just the razzmatazz of Brexit. They hyped it up because the Remain side were in government and they didn't want our side to win. They didn't expect us to win, so they threw money at the job, even spending our money on their leaflet from the taxpayer, despite the fact that 17.4 million taxpayers wanted to leave. But a referendum doesn't have to be like that. A referendum can be more like the Swiss model, where they always put the big stuff out to the public. But as I've said before, this has to work hand in hand with an honest media. You can't have referendum-style politics if the media is dishonest, like this last 3 years. Excess deaths and anyone who died of the disease within 28 days of a test, even if they fell off a ladder or got crushed on a motorbike, still went down as a virus death. So unless you have an honest media, the referendum-style politics won't work. But the one we've got doesn't work, because the ones we've got, and Keir Starmer at the helm, are ready to give away our sovereignty over everything: farming, agriculture and livestock, over emissions, over the climate, over pandemics, illnesses, the need for vaccination, for travel. Everything is being handed over to non-government organisations, yet the government, the ministers, the MPs don't do their job any cheaper. I could understand it if we were getting a discount. I could understand it if, well, it's not going to cost us as much to run 650 goons in Parliament. But sadly, it is going to cost us just as much. So what are they doing if they're handing all this power away? And who said that they could? Because the people of this country are sovereign. And that's how our politics works. It's our sovereignty that we hand on trust to Parliament. And they're supposed to act on our behalf, not despite the fact we're here. So the weather, which is where we started, the reason I talk about the weather is because how can someone sit in Zurich who won't be aware that the weather in Lancashire is completely different to the weather in Surrey with my friend's brown lawn? So they would issue horseback bans. It goes beyond that. But we need micromanagement for our country. All countries do. You need people who understand the areas that they live in. That's why you shouldn't have these politicians flown into safe seats. Rishi Sunak's got no affinity to North Yorkshire. It should be somebody from North Yorkshire. Somebody who understands what North Yorkshire's about. Same for the rest of the country. No matter whether you like Johnny Mercer or you didn't, at least when he did stand originally to be an MP, he would only stand in Plymouth, which was his hometown. At least he had some integrity there, although the veterans are not keen on him. They feel they've been let down because PTSD with the veterans, I don't know if you're aware of this, there was about 38 different countries sent troops out, to Afghanistan. And only the 5 countries that joined in a vaccination campaign out in the Middle East are the ones that have suffered PTSD. The other countries that didn't join in it have no PTSD. How do we explain that? That's according to evidence being brought forward by a team of veterans with a barrister, trying to get people to acknowledge what went on. So, I don't know what went on in the Gulf Wars, but I do know this. We tell the nations that we're going in for democracy and freedom, and it always seems to me we go into places that have an abundance of natural resources like oil, gas, minerals. It never seems to be really about democracy, because have we left anywhere any better? I don't know, I'm asking you. Have we come, when you saw how they left Afghanistan, the Americans under Biden's regime, I mean, that was atrocious. So what I'm getting at here is we have all these people that we pay to run this country who are not going to do it any cheaper after they've given it away to other places, after they've listened to what the WEF want from us. The other worry, of course, is the only thing that we've got, it's not our natural resources, it's not our climate, it's not for tourism. The only thing we've got is the tax base. We're considered a tax farm because they can throw taxes at us for just about everything. We're a heavily taxed country. Now, Austria is quite heavily taxed, but everything works. The trains are on time and they're clean. Public transport is excellent. Doctors' surgeries, you ring your doctor up, you see them that day. There's none of this waiting. There's no hospital diseases. Everything's sterile. Chemists are like the old-fashioned chemists used to be, with lots of staff on, and they wear white coats and they understand a little bit about what you've gone in with. Everything about that country operates, functions really well. So if you're being taxed heavily and the country's being run right, it's a much easier pill to swallow, isn't it, than what we have to put up with, which is being taxed heavily and watching the country go to the dogs. The riots in Air Hills. Air Hills are a melting pot of different ethnic minorities and religions that don't get on with each other. And they're all forced together because that's where they ended up living because of the way the government handled it. So it's never going to work like that, is it? If they didn't get on with each other in their own countries and then you shove them all together, the kettle together, it's going to eventually result in trouble. So you have to watch that with your country. You have to watch the potholes in the road. You have to watch everything getting worse, and yet nothing's getting cheaper. So that's my gripe. Why we tax so much to watch a country go to the dogs? And it's the same guilty faces. They pop up. Yvette Cooper, Labour. They're Tories were doing it anyway. Let's not hide behind any bushels. The Tories were doing what Labour were doing anyway. The Labour government will just be quicker. So it's important to understand what's going on. It's important to enjoy your own life while you can if you're not living in an affected area. And it's important to understand that you can always fight back. You always have the option. Even if you're only needling MPs with a few emails, you can get back at them. We did it, me and my email team, with the 3,000 of us that were possed together on Facebook, and we got non-stunned halal meat banned in Lancashire schools, and we even faced the Council of Mosques because we stuck to the real issue, and the issue was the animal cruelty. That's what we stuck to. It's wrong. There's no need for it. And we won. So you can have results if you put the effort in. It's motivating people to put that effort in. That's one of our biggest obstacles. That you'll watch this podcast and you'll watch more informative podcasts than me. I'm just really like motivational to help you understand. It's not lost. I don't look to say I'm going to go and live in another country. I've got the wherewithal to do that if I needed to. But I look around me and I think, what other country? I don't want to be sat in some foreign country where something kicks off, because you've got to remember, we might not be happy about the WHO Pandemic Treaty and all its controls and powers it would have, but they're going to have the same powers over Spain, Portugal, France. It's going to have the same powers, and then you're going to be sat there as a foreigner, and at my age, as an ageing foreigner. I don't want to be sat there with one of us dying and then having to come home to live, and then the world of even my homeland changing again. Do you know what I mean? I'd rather sit here and see it through and try and make some changes where I can. We've made some changes locally over various issues. It can be done, especially if you're willing to get involved at parish council level. You can affect change if you introduce your thinking. One of the most effective things I ever saw, and I pin it every so often to my Twitter page, is a woman who went to a council meeting. She powered her offices on solar power. She was into green energy, but she went into it in finite detail, and the messaging that she came out with about the cost and the sacrifices, for instance, to make batteries with lithium and cobalt being mined by slave labour, children and women who weren't even getting a drink during the day, the kids were known to be dead before they were 13 or 14 because the bodies couldn't cope with the stress. There's so much information there that your councils aren't aware of, because they only get fed one side of the narrative from the government. So you can make a difference. It's never too late, never ever too late. No matter what you think, it's not too late. And at the end of the day, you've got troubled areas at the moment in our towns that were always troubled areas. You've only got to look back to the Oldham riots. How long ago was that? 15, 20 years ago? I'm not sure. But that area in Oldham was a hotspot anyway. So we haven't got to lose sight of the sensationalism of social media sometimes, even on our side of the fence. There's a lot of clickbaiters out there. There's a lot of people wanting to watch their podcast, buy their t-shirt, buy a mug, support them, ring the bell, do this, that and the other. And they need something to tell you to keep you coming back. So they're not necessarily, when I say honest, it's not the right word really. They're not necessarily reporting on something so that you know. They're reporting on something so that you watch them. Whereas I try to think, well, hang on a minute, this was always a dodgy area anyway, so it's not good what's gone on. But it has happened before, and it's happened 15, 20 years before in other areas, Toxteth riots. There's always been hot spots. So we don't sit here today, or I wouldn't sit here today thinking all is doomed, because it happened years ago too, and then it calms down and we have a period of peace and something else kicks off. But never lose sight of the fact that everything that's good in your life you put there. That's the most important thing. And then that will show you how much you don't need too much government.